Jake, is the college football playoff trying to eliminate the Big 12 and the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's a power play happening. Obviously, everyone's been following this story about, once again, restructuring the college football playoff and the SEC and the Big Ten, trying to get more spots, grab more power, get more leverage. There's no question about it that the SEC and the Big Ten are, continuing to try to improve their stance. And I think you look at this reseeding situation, it opens the door for that. And I think, the interesting thing about this is the whole conference championship angle. We don't have to talk about that anymore because now we're going to reseed, and the top seeds are going to get the buys. So I think I prefer this model, but there's no question the SEC and the Big Ten, lobbied for this, pushed for this, advocated for this so hard because they want to be able to dominate the narrative. And this concept of, 4 from the SEC, 4 from the Big Ten, 2 from the Big 12, and 2 from the ACC. I would be upset about it too if I was the Big 12. I think that, it's hard when you verbalize it as, hey, these two conferences are getting twice as many seeds as we are. And I think that's a really painful pill to swallow. And I think the unfortunate part is the only way to get more power, to try to fix this for yourself, is by winning more high consequence football games. And even then, I'm not sure that a fix is going to come in for you before the Super League shows up. So yeah, I do think that the Big Ten and the SEC are absolutely trying to continue to control their income, continue to control their revenue, continue to control the narrative, and continue to dominate the conversation. And I would also point out that when you look at this from a TV partner perspective, this is great for ESPN. You want these leagues to get as many seeds as possible, and that's what I think. That's what I think this is at the end of the day. This is conferences making more money, TV partners making more money, and everyone else who's not them making less money. That's the reality.
And what I say about it is, this is why you got to win more games. This is why Dave Aranda can't be the football coach at Baylor. It's why Mike Gundy can't take a pay cut to justify paying more NIL. It's why Kyle Whittingham can't have the disastrous season they had at Utah. It's why if you are BYU and Colorado, you can't lose to Kansas, right? Like, it's all these things that the Big 12, it's why FSU can't have the season that they had. It's why Bill Belichick's girlfriend can't be a bigger story than how great the football team looks. Because if you're the Big 12 in the ACC, you are already climbing uphill, right? The Big 10 and the SEC, because they control the picture, they're running downhill. And frankly, they're at the bottom of the hill running away with the money train. Meanwhile, the Big 12 is trying to figure out how to win a football game in some towns. And that's just frankly unacceptable. It's why when we talk about basketball being such an important part of the equation, it's 20% of your TV deal, and it is about 35% of your revenue pie. It's why you can't have terrible seasons at places like Arizona State. It's why Bobby Hurley's not good enough there. Your football program's resurrected from the dead, but your basketball program continues to turn its entire roster over. It's why in the Big 12, I will continue to beat the drum that anything less than perfection is not good enough, because you don't have the margin. If you are West Virginia, you did the right thing. Neil Brown needs fired on a billboard. Fire his ass. You did. You hired Rich Rod. Now you got to compete for a conference championship. That's the minimum bar, because anymore in this game that we are playing, where the Big Ten and the SEC are each going to have 4 spots, and they are going to control half of the 16 teams in the college football playoff, you have zero room for error. And until these conferences, the ACC and the Big 12, get to a place where they believe they are the biggest and the best, and until we stop running from things like private equity investments, title sponsors, naming rights, all of that, so that you can afford to play better athletes, pay better coaches, pay better professors, pay better everything. Until you do that, and until you make that commitment, you don't deserve to have as many automatic qualifying spots as the Big Ten and the SEC.
Couldn't agree more.
You simply don't. And it sucks, but it is what it is. And I will continue to tell you every time one of these comes up, how is it that Notre Dame, with its rich history and tradition of disappointing outcomes, Now, do you guys understand with this AQ that they automatically get in if they're one of the now 16 best teams in the country? But how about this seeding thing? Because I think this is an even bigger story. Conference champions don't automatically get a bye week.
Mm-hmm.
If you are 1 through 4 in the college football playoff rankings, you get a bye week. Well, Notre Dame, tougher road to hoe. They're not in a conference, can't get a bye week. Yeah, about that. Notre Dame's road to a bye just got easier. Maybe you don't want to bye after what happened this past year.
Yeah, and I think the conversation around strength of schedule is really fascinating because it's going to come down to what we value now, right? I mean, that's ultimately what we're talking about here. I mean, if you're going off a strength of schedule and and undefeated teams, now we got to have a different conversation, right? I mean, now it just looks completely different. So I that's what's going to be really quite fascinating.
Yeah, I think this is a huge mess for the ACC and the Big 12. You are, and I'll continue to say you're on the outside looking in. You're not involved in the power structure. You have no say over the structure of the college football playoff. You just don't have a way if you are the Big 12 or the ACC to control your destiny. And now you got to do something about that. And I don't know what you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think there's anything in the short term that can be done about it. I think that you've kind of made your bed here and now you're going to lie in it. And I would also point out that for all the tinfoil hat people who are like, oh, well, the Big 12 and the ACC are going to tooth and fight their way through this. Like, you look at this graphic right here. This is what last year's college football playoff would have looked like if the new model was applied to it. And the thing I want to point out to you guys is look at Arizona State the first round. Yeah, matchup looks a little different, doesn't it? Right? Matchup looks a little different. And I think that I also look at Penn State. Penn State's path looks, a little bit different, doesn't it?
Yeah, look at Oregon getting Indiana, who Notre Dame absolutely curb stomped. Now, maybe Oregon goes a little further, right? Maybe Oregon's better than Penn State and Notre Dame, even if they combine their rosters.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon's better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably. Right? So I think this is the biggest issue. And I don't know how to get people to understand that we can sit here and we can play this game all you want. You've lost control of your destiny now. You've lost control of your fate. You no longer control how much money you make. You no longer control who you play and where you play.
And by the way, we're also just assuming, and I think this is mostly for the Big 12, because the ACC's proven this ability. You're just assuming that you'll get 2 teams in, right? Like, you're just assuming your conference is good enough to have, to have 2 teams in. Like, what happens if the Big 12 only has 1 team and the SEC has 5 teams and the Big 10's got 4 teams?
It's a huge problem.
Right? Like, you're just assuming, you're making the assumption that your conference has 2 teams good enough to be in the CFP conversation. Like, I'm just telling you guys, like, this is not, like, I agree with you. This is no longer, oh yeah, we're gonna make money and we're gonna be fine and everything's perfect.
I think if you're the ACC and the Big 12, you're getting a maximum of 2 teams in.
Like, that's best case, perfect world scenario.
Well, you're guaranteed that, right? The Big 10 will get 4, the SEC get 4, that's 8. The ACC gets 2, that's 10. The Big 12 gets 2, that's 14. Notre Dame gets 1, that's 15. Right? Like, I mean, this is not hard to figure out.
But I think that the conversation around, hey, what is the committee value? And because that's just I'm just saying there's chaos that can happen within this. There are a million different scenarios that can take place. I understand, yeah, 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC, 4. Okay, cool.
And then you have 2 at large.
Right. So my point is the Big 12 is never getting those at large bids.
No.
The ACC is never getting those at large bids.
Because you're not willing to do what it takes.
So the real conversation has to be, okay, if Notre Dame's in there, obviously, and they're going to be in there, who gets those 2 at large bids?
Well, last year it would have been LSU, I would think. I think you could have made a pretty hefty argument for Ole Miss. Like,
yeah. So my point is like, that's great. We're talking about 4-4-2-2. But who's going to be the first conference to have 5 in? Like, that's what this is aimed at, is like, hey, let's make it easier to overachieve if we're the SEC and the Big Ten. And I would also point out this whole narrative around like, hey, who's the better conference between the SEC and the Big Ten because the Big Ten has been winning national championships lately. Like, I'm just telling you, that is now, to me, if you're the SEC, what you should be concerned about. Hey, how do we win more national championships? How do we give ourselves the best opportunity to be the last team standing as a conference? Because we know that without a doubt, because we're the SEC and because they're the Big Ten, we're both definitely going to have 4 teams in every year. We have the case, we've got the schedule. We are going to have 4 teams in every single year, and those 4 teams are definitely going to win games, and we're going to get more shares.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the, the expanded college football playoff, and you look at, if it had been 12, you'd have had Alabama and Arizona State in. If it had been 14, that would have been Miami and Ole Miss. 16 would have been South Carolina and Clemson, but they'd have been in already because of the conference championship. Like, BYU is going to be real close to getting in at that point.
Yeah.
Or not, because are you telling me that BYU is getting in over Missouri or Iowa State? Right? Like, those are the conversations you wind up having. And I think that the nod's always going to go to the brand. So we'll see. I think we want this utopic society where everybody gets an equal shot. If it's 16, all 4 conferences get 4. No, it's not going to work like that.
No,
it's not. Or all the 4 of the P4s get 2, and then the G5s can have 6. It's not going to work like that.
Come on.
It's not going to work like that. It's just the Big 12, and it's the Big 12 in particular. You've got to be better. Utah has to be better. Oak State has to be better. Texas, I think Texas Tech is that brand in this league that can absolutely explode into a national power. But will you ever win those games? Will you ever do what's got to be done? You've spent a ton of money on talent this year. Maybe I believe too much in Texas Tech because I always get slapped in the bag when I say that. I think Texas Tech, out of any other school in this conference, can be that brand, because it's not going to be Kansas or K-State. It's not going to be Oak State. They don't have the balls to do it, right? It's not going to be TCU, because TCU is too occasionally good. I think it's Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I truly think it's Texas Tech. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Seth, who makes hats, what would it take to boost ACC and Big 12? Bowl wins, SEC drops a lot of bowls. I think bowl games are over. That stuff's done.
It's about beating the SEC at their own game.
You need that. The hardest part for the ACC and the Big 12, you got to schedule up now. It's not enough to beat each other anymore. You've got to schedule. If you're BYU, remember how BYU made their name? They ran through the Pac-12. You guys remember that? And right before they got into the Big 12, and they scheduled, and that's what you have to do. You got to go beat the big boys. You've got to find a way, if you're the Big 12, to get the Oregons and the Alabamas on your schedule. If you look at what Notre Dame just announced, they're playing Wisco in Green Bay at Lambeau Field.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the games you need, because when somebody's fighting for you in that college football playoff committee room, well, yeah, but they did beat Notre Dame at Lambeau Field.